Hello and welcome to the evolution of the Fempreneur podcast, the go-to resource for women who want to grow a successful business. Our mission is to empower and support women on their entrepreneurial journeys by providing valuable insights, practical tips, and a supportive community of like-minded women. Each episode of the evolution of the Fempreneur podcast features interviews with successful fempreneurs, business experts, and thought leaders, as well as a solo episode from our host. That's me, Wonderful Morrison, brand and marketing coach, business expert, and online business educator. If you're already on your entrepreneurial journey and seeking to take your business to the next level, the evolution of the Fempreneur podcast has something for you. Join our community of empowered women and gain the knowledge, skills, and confidence you need to succeed in your entrepreneurial endeavors. Thank you for tuning in to the evolution of the Fempreneur podcast. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the evolution of the Fempreneur. This podcast is where we explore inspiring stories of women, like my guest today, who have taken a leap into entrepreneurship later in our lives. And today we're diving into another fascinating episode that promises to uplift, motivate, inspire, and perhaps challenge the way you think about the subject we are going to be talking about today is human trafficking. So in this episode, I am so thrilled to have our beautiful guest, Alicia Tappan. And here's why I'm freaking losing my mind over it. First of all, let me just say she's the founder and CEO of Survival-Led Solutions, and which is really about dramatically changing the way that we see human trafficking awareness. This is her mission, vision, and goal in life. And when we met a little while ago, I've met a few people in the space of human trafficking awareness through products, services, and things like that. But Alicia is a whole different ballgame. She is like the meteor coming out of the sky, unstoppable, hot and blazing. Okay. She is not just a mother of three young children under the age of
9.
And when we met, she was pregnant with her third child, getting her Ph.D. I mean, running a full-on business. She left her corporate space and running a business from scratch, writing a book, running an organization, having retreats. This is all happening in the same breath, y'all. It's not like separate Monday, Tuesday. No, it's all happening in the same breath. And it changed my view of what it is to have awareness about human trafficking. We all know it. There was a big movie that came out a few months, I think it was last year, right? That really shook up our new view of human trafficking. But let me just say it like this. It's happening here. It's happening in our neighborhoods. It's happening in our schools. It's happening behind us, in front of us, beside us. But we're seeing it from outside, like different countries and international, right? Taken. Has anybody seen Taken? Alicia is here to show us that it can happen so easily right in front of us, right underneath our nose. So I am so proud to have her and so happy to have Alicia Tappan. Welcome to the evolution of the Fempreneur podcast with that long-winded introduction. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. And wonderful. You are wonderful. So thank you for having me and making sure that I am on my P's and Q's, because this stuff is hard to talk about, but at the same time, I have that same energy. It's exciting work because it's groundbreaking. People really don't understand. And unfortunately, it's historically tragic. And it dates all the way back to the Bible. We know the story of Joseph, right? And his brothers sell him into slavery. So it's not something new. It just has been dressed up, changed, and altered. And so that's how they keep getting away with it, is because it trends. So if we're able to look at it from that eye, unveiling the it doesn't happen here, it would never happen to me or my family, but take into consideration, I have a choice in this conversation. And if I choose to partake in it, I actually can prevent it, intervene with it, and help rehabilitate the victims that have been trafficked.
And what I really want to know, and I know my audience is wanting to know too, what led you to create survival-led solutions? Because I feel like all of us have had at one point in our lives as adults had a conversation about human trafficking. Like my two adult children were in a movie called Eden. It was a true story about a young girl who was at a bar with her friends and was human trafficked, right? And so all of us have had some conversations of seeing some type of show or movie. But what about you? What led you to creating this business?
So I was trafficked by my coach in high school. So I'm actually a survivor. And I didn't know what it was then. Now, this is 20 years ago, and we didn't have a lot of language or research really around it yet. So they labeled my case rape and conspiracy. I'm one of the very small numbers, I mean, there are very few, who actually prosecute their trafficker and follow it through and put them in jail. He got prison for 7 years. He spent his time. He actually got a law degree while he was there.
Shut your
He gets out, commits more crimes, right? Eventually becomes this executive of an estate, embezzles $140,000 in 4 months. He gets caught. Now, this is almost 10 years later, and I haven't even dealt with any of this stuff, right? I did what every other high schooler kid would do. I'm going to forget about it, pretend like it doesn't exist, self-medicate, self-cope, which were all negative choices, move around a lot, pretty much banish myself from my past and try to start over. And meanwhile, he's just developing his criminal activity to the point where he gets caught. And when he does, he has the same judge that I had 10 years before. So I actually have a newspaper article clipping that says if it wasn't for the girl in the hot tub, which was where I was initiated into trafficking, if it wasn't for that girl, we wouldn't know how evil this man really was. And so now he's in prison for the rest of his life. So even to that, right? Like the small thing that you didn't think was going to be as monumental can always add up. It's those stepping stones to success. And I didn't see our court case as successful. In fact, I was really confused. I didn't understand force, fraud, or coercion, which are all entities that need to be proven if you're an adult in trafficking. But as a kid, those don't really matter because we can't legally consent to sex. So when I learned about force, fraud, and coercion, and I learned about human trafficking through the social workforce, I I was like, wait, I know exactly what those things are. Right? Those were the things that got me in that hot tub that night. They were the gifts and the affirmations and the love that he sort of showed this group of kids. And he was really into, creating this safe space, but it was exploitive. And he would record kids having sex that he set up, the drugs, the space, and he would record it and sell it online as porn. And it was really child rape. And so we had a huge case. It actually made national news and it got picked up by a lot of media. But because I was a kid, I wasn't privy to any of that limelight. And I'm glad I didn't.
Right. Yeah.
But it did make a lot of confusion for me because what is rape and conspiracy? Like I know what rape is, but conspiracy, have you ever sought counseling for conspiracy? People assume you're paranoid, and I wasn't paranoid. So
Yeah.
it was very confusing. But to trudge us like right through my life, which was grueling and hard, relationships were difficult, jobs were hard. I was homeless. I was addicted to alcohol. I smoked marijuana every day. I was trying to figure out how to just be okay with me, be comfortable with me.
Right.
And it wasn't until about 2011, I've been through a series of more traumas that we won't have time for today. But I meet this guy who's my age. He's 5 years older than me, but he's the only guy my age that's like comes to the bar that I work with in Colorado. And I don't trust anybody, right? Like I have a very hard time with understanding like what is even a romantic relationship. I know how to use you, abuse you, and burn you before you do me. And so when he starts being kind of nice to me and he tells me I have all this potential, I marry him. Right? He asked me to marry him, and we dated for like 2 years, and then we got engaged and we moved to Florida. And I learned about this thing called human trafficking. And
Wow. Wait, hold on
I'm
a second. So
like
let's
10
back
years.
up a little. Let's be really clear about this particular section of what you're saying
Okay.
is you were human trafficked, you went through more trauma, the big case, but you don't deal with that particular thing until 10
10
years
years later.
later.
So I was
That because I think that's
exploited.
important to address because there's people out there right now that's in that bit in between space of are we just shoving that down so deep and not addressing it. I just wanted to
Right.
make that really clear to the audience because I feel like that's huge to recognize.
It's monumental in the healing journey, right?
Yeah,
It's not the sexy part of your recovery because
right.
most people don't understand. They love the gruesome details, right? I was raped in front of my friends. I was recorded. People saw all this stuff. It happened over and over again all summer long. I spent 5 years
Mm,
self-exploiting. I didn't need a pimp, right? Because now I already know how to do it and I can make money off of it. All that is tragic,
mm-hmm.
not being dealt with. Then you finally see this person that sees you for like the PhD student I am, right? And like I didn't even see her. I didn't know she existed anymore. She was a complete,
Mm,
mirror up reflection and I didn't see her in there. And I'm trying to figure this thing out. Why do I have so much pain? I mean,
mm,
nightmares and visions and flashbacks and all these things, and I'm not in that life anymore, right? I've gotten
mm-hmm.
myself out of it. In fact, I have a master's degree at this point. So it wasn't until I meet another survivor and she tells me her story. And as we're talking, like, and I'm just here as like an adoption specialist. I finally got a job in psychology, which I had 2 degrees in, and I'm just trying to figure out this. And I just happened to meet this girl. I swear to God, I was looking at her and I saw myself. And I sort of fall to the ground. We're both walking through a Starbucks drive-through because neither of us have a license. Like I have all of the same issues she does, right? I'm married at this point for like a month. And I'm like, I can't get my stuff together. I can't keep a license, for the life of me, for whatever reason. I have this issue with money. I don't like it. It's evil to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these negative connotations with, jobs and relationships and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And she's telling me this, and I'm like, holy crap. Like, that's what happened to me. That's called human trafficking. Oh, he's in jail, like, so
Right.
and for that to be like the starting point of my healing journey was this. I can't explain it except for it was like the heavens came down and like planted in my head. I had supernatural knowledge of things I didn't understand. I was reading about cases of these kids being kidnapped overseas, and I'm like, hold on, right? Like that doesn't just
Mm-hmm.
happen there. That happens
Mm-hmm.
here. By people we know and we trust and we love and we think are going to take care of us, and they abuse us. And then we get put into these positions where we're looked like the predator or the criminal and we're the victim, and our
Mm-hmm.
behaviors don't match what people have in their head about what a victim would look like, right? Because we're angry and we have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
trust issues. And so people expect, oh, you've been held in captivity. Well, when I say captivity, we need to remember that this is a mental warfare. Human trafficking
Mm-hmm.
isn't just physical sex or labor, it is the coercive behavior, the narcissistic behavior that gets deeply rooted into how you think and what you should do and who you should talk to or not talk to, how you should dress, how you should look, all these things that play into our self-worth. It completely captivates that and takes it over.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're left high and dry when you no longer can make the money that you used to. So that's why women go from like private parties like I was, right?
Right.
To like strip clubs and brothels to what we call
Mm-hmm.
prostitution on the streets. It starts really high class, high end stuff, but your body keeps the score. And so your brain can't keep
Mm-hmm.
up with all the physical trauma that you're going
Yeah.
through, right? Our bodies were not created to be machines like that, no matter what
Yeah.
kind of physical abuse you put on it. So by the time I had met my husband in 2014, and I was just learning about the coach and all these things, and I get married, meet this survivor, uh, I decided I wasn't going to take it anymore. I wasn't going to take my own self deprivation. I wasn't going to
Mm.
constantly go back to well, I can just make my money on the street, or I can find somebody else, or I can, all these things. I decided I wanted to really be married and have the life that we all kind of dream about.
Yeah.
And, but I didn't do it very well. I wanted it. I had a lot of healing to do. So I started participating in all types of therapeutic remedies, anything I could get, right? Now, they weren't always the best because I didn't know what I was looking for. So I tried a lot, right? They say the same with medication. Don't give up after the first sample because your brain might need something different. And so I liken it to combat PTSD. Veterans who come back from war and, they see that intense trauma. That's what a survivor of human trafficking is dealing with, and it's unrecognized and undiagnosed, and they don't
because
they
on the
don't know.
outside you look like everybody else, right? There's no apparent destructive looking part, like a missing leg or whatever. But I also want to ask, you said it in the beginning about how it's happening in our neighborhoods, and it's happening at a rate that we're not even really seeing because it's like right underneath our nose. A lot of people probably have this question of like, well, what kind of a home did she come from? Right?
Sure.
That is usually the basis that people will go into because they're assuming it can't happen to me.
Right. So both my parents were at home. They worked, they each had a job. I had the same third grade teacher as my mom, so I went to the same school, so I knew everybody. My brother was younger than me by 2 years, and had dinner at 6 o'clock every night. I was student council president, National Honor Society president. I was the girl who should know better. And that's what was so devastating, was because I wasn't seen as a victim. I was seen as a strong-willed, hormonal, promiscuous teenager by this point. Before, I was untouchable. I was the virgin, and it was like, as soon as that was, I guess, in some way, I mean, it was taken from me, that was pulled right from me. But at the same time, it wasn't like anybody took it seriously after that, because they're like, well, now she knows what sex is, so therefore that she's just a slut. And so, and that's what happened. And there was no protecting my voice, because adults in authority figures in my life were like, we heard about what you did this summer, so we're going to ask you to step down from these leadership positions. Right. My best friend, who I told, I
so
think
they
I got
made you
raped.
like the victim, like they were the victim,
Like I was the
not you.
perpetrator.
Yeah, like you were the perpetrator.
Because that's how I got addressed by my best friends when I told them I think I was raped. Like, I told twice and no one did anything. And the time I told my friends, they were like, well, rape's a really strong word, Alicia. These guys have full ride scholarships to Michigan State, which is where I was from. And so they were like, oh, you don't want to ruin their life, do you? You don't remember, because I was drugged, and I didn't have a lot of ammo to go into the fight with. So I was really, taken back in that. So you talk about your power being taken away. Like, this is the epitome of that. And you can't just assume that you would choose to go into it. People say that all the time. Well, she's a prostitute, so she made that choice.
Right.
We got to talk about that, because it is a job, right? And here's the thing. Wonderful. There is a whole movement on pro-sex work, and I'm not shaming or saying anything negative, but I want to go back to, our bodies are not made to have that much abuse. It's abuse when you're doing something that is meant for intimate moments on a regular basis, right? So you wouldn't go around just powerlifting all the time, right? Every time you wanted to open the fridge, you're just like, oh, 500 pounds, No, like, so, and people don't see that, because again, it's done in dark, it's hidden, it's in secret. And so you don't see it. And so when we get to the level of what we call prostitution, which is a criminal offense, I want to question and challenge even anybody listening today. I can tell you that statistics show from the 80s, 90% of women who work in the sex work industry were sexually exploited as children, meaning they suffered from some sort of molestation and touching. They had some sort of intercourse. They were exposed to porn. Something happened during their childhood, and it led to chronic aging. That's it. Unresolved trauma. And now they think this is their value and this is all they're worth. And so this is how they make their money. It's conditioned over time, and it could be familial, meaning their family, it's regenerational. It's part of what they do, and it's normalized. Dysfunction doesn't know it's dysfunctional. So again, we can make a choice to get into professional sex work. we can do that, but it's not likely that that's how it started. And if we really
Right.
take a deep rooted look, you're going to see that there were things along the way that got that person into that belief that this is okay.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward, right? You asked me how I got into survivor led solutions. I started talking all the time. I wouldn't shut up because I never talked about it. And I
That's a
tried all these different
beautiful.
therapies, right? And so eventually it was like, I have to do something. This isn't like I'm an anomaly in my own demographic of survivor space. And then no one knows what this stuff is. And then there's state
Mm-hmm.
legislation being passed to say that we're mandated to learn about it. And no one knows what it really is. They're just talking about statistics. And these statistics are incorrect because it's undiagnosed, it's unidentified, right? And it takes another survivor really to help somebody identify their own story. So we know the numbers are skewed in general. We know it's happening a
Right.
lot more to both men and women. And we know that uh, areas are more hotspots than others simply
Mm-hmm.
because of the transition of people that come and go. So where
Mm-hmm.
I'm at now in Florida, we're ranked number 3, right? Florida, California, New York. The 3 things that those people, all those states have in common is people coming and going,
Mm-hmm.
our coasts, right? So we have
Mm-hmm.
different transportation outlets, and then you have all these major highways that come and go and connect people to these places. So
Right.
these attractions that are built around these highways, you have Disney World, so do I, right? Like, so
Right.
so you think about it like that, and then I dive deeper. Well, not only do we have spring breakers and summer vacationers and college students and military brats and retirees, like
Right.
Florida is prime for people being transitioned in and out quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes it so intense. And so I wanted to be a part of the change. I didn't want to be told what human trafficking was if I knew what it was better. And so
Right.
I started an awareness group with the local chapter of what we call A21, which Christine Kane is an international pastor. She has an organization,
Yes.
right? And we
Yes. That's how
started,
I know a lot about it is through her program.
yeah, her program is great. They set the tone for
Yeah.
awareness, and they do those walks. And so we started with
Mhm.
walks, and I would speak at the walk. And then I got sort of plucked out of the crowd and became the executive director for what's called The Secret Place, which is a nonprofit that did a safe house. We built the first safe house in our area. Realized really quickly that we needed a drop-in advocacy center as well. So we sort of transitioned the model to take care of that. And then this is where you meet me, right? Is now
Yeah.
I'm a national public speaker. I want to write my book, and I get in a car accident, and I find out I'm pregnant. And I know that's not how it works, but that's how I found out.
Yeah.
So my husband, we've been married for 10 years this year, and we were sitting on the bed, and I was holding my little 3-week-old baby, and I was really upset because I couldn't find childcare, and I
Hmm.
wanted to continue this work, but I was having to decide if I could keep my job. And I mean, I was working it from every angle with the my boss and the board of directors, and they were like, "We'll give you 3 more weeks of unpaid leave, but we have to fill your position." And I'm
Mm,
like devastated, right? I
right.
am at the mountaintop of what I think I'm capable of doing. And so my husband and I would pray very specifically, right? Like, show us the childcare. We're on like 10 different
Yeah.
waiting lists. Which one is it? How long is it going to be? We need an answer now, right? And
Yeah.
I hear the voice that I've heard several times in my life now go, "You are the childcare." And I
Wow.
realized right there, I had to quit my job. And
Mm,
now we have 2 other kids, right? And they have needs, and it's about to be summer, and what are we going to do? It ended up being kind of like the perfect storm. Um, all this chaos about like keeping my job, leaving my job. What are we going to do? I happen to be home, right? So now I can be home for the summer. So we didn't have to put them in any type of camp or anything. I had the
mm,
baby. I didn't have to put him into care because now I'm home. We had saved up money because we really wanted to buy a second house and rent our house. That was like our next mission. And so I had funding to be able to stay home. And right in that moment, all these organizations who knew about me, when they heard that I was stepping down from my position, they started calling. And I turned down several other leadership positions at other organizations because I knew I was supposed to go on my own. And I didn't know what to call the organization, so I got a whiteboard out and I just wrote down all the words I could think of, right?
Mm-hmm.
We landed on survivor-led solutions because we thought it was very clear of what the
Mm-hmm.
mission was going to be, and it was for the survivors like me, right? So many
Mm-hmm.
organizations started popping up to do direct care services and help with the removal and rescue missions, and all that was going on, but no one was looking at the long-term game. How do you keep survivors
Yeah.
healthy? And I was the
Right.
epitome of the people I wanted to serve, because I was like, what happens when you want to get on your own and you don't want to work at a
Right.
nonprofit or a business where you feel like you're not really where you're supposed to be? Like, you have a story to
Right.
tell, you have people to talk to. They want to write books, they want to do podcasts like we're doing now, right? Like,
Right.
and they want to serve this population with their story.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized we were going to start a nonprofit. And I
Yeah.
didn't really think that was going to be it at first. I really wanted to consult, but then all of a sudden it was like the organizations that were calling me, they were like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we want you to get on your own too. So we're going to financially support you. So one organization literally paid for me to have a housekeeper all summer long. Right?
Yes.
I was able to focus because I wasn't being distracted. When the
Yes.
baby took a nap, I was able to start writing out policies and
Mm-hmm.
procedures. Another organization said, we're going to pay for your mortgage for the next 3 months so you can get on your own. What? No one gets
Wow.
that, right? I'm like, that
Right.
that is not just like something you can sign up for and write, a request letter for.
Right.
It just came. And then another organization was like, by the way, we actually write and pay for all of the filing for your nonprofit, so I can help you create your dream. And I'm
Wow.
just sitting here like, okay, God, like, you clearly have a plan. I have to go on my own. It was the
Mm-hmm.
hardest phone call to make, but I did it. And when I relinquished, my leadership position, the doors wide open. I was
Yeah.
in front of, and it was so funny, wonderful. And this is what I want to say to Fempreneurs. You show up with that baby in hand and you show up with that briefcase with your proposal on it and you put it down and you don't take no for an answer. Because I'm like, if I have the girth to go through this whole motion, right? Show
Yes.
up, you've got a good one. I'm not just faking it
Right.
till I make it. Like, I'm not going anywhere.
Yes.
And that was kind of my MO. Was It was hard because people were like, well, what are you going to do now? And I'm like, you'll see, So we launched Survivor-led Solutions in July last year. So we're 1 year old this
Mm-hmm.
next month. And the whole premise is professional and leadership development, and then ongoing mental health services, which includes the retreats. So I saw that gap. I know, and
Mm-hmm.
the survivors funneled in, like funneled in, because what I could do that no one else was doing was I had templates for everything that I wanted to create for my own nonprofit. So I'm providing that as a service to them. So whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
business proposal to a budget to, templates for your board, for your articles of
Mm-hmm.
incorporation, anything that would help them navigate that first, because it builds confidence, right? Those first
Right.
few
Oh,
steps.
100%.
And so
Yeah.
that's what we saw. Yeah.
Well, and as you're sharing this story, I myself am like getting all riled up because really we see, like those movies that are coming out or shows that you see or interviews that you've heard from like Oprah and all, they don't show they only share like when it happened, how it happened, that experience. But really, as I'm listening to, I'm thinking, yeah, what does happen after? What does
Mm-hmm.
happen with? And I remember in one of our conversations, when we first met, you shared a story that shook me. You said you went on a date with your now husband,
Mm-hmm.
and you were kind of like, okay, but in your mind, you were experiencing it as when you were in the game, right?
Right. Right.
And you said driving home, you were
Yeah.
so unsure about where was he taking you that you got out of the moving car. And I was like, wait, is this like for real? Are you telling a real story? And you were like, you got out of the car and you started walking
Well, I
away
ran.
because yeah, because you didn't have a clue. But that's what I'm saying. Like, there's even people who have not experienced that are still dealing with traumas, and their behaviors from those
Right.
traumas are showing up as a parent, as a husband, as a wife, as an employee, as a business owner, but so much deeper from a place like that, right? Of where you were actually being told you were the perpetrator, right? And then you go through 10 years of living life and not ever dealing with this. And then you run into a person who's like, whoa, we're mimicking the same life story here. What is happening to where you're at today? And when you told that story, I thought, what does happen? Where do these women go when they are 25 and 30 and 40 years old, knowing that they'd experienced that kind of life? And when you said you were starting this company, I thought, oh my gosh, this is great. And then you're such a meteor blazing through the atmosphere into Earth. You're like, I'm creating this, I'm doing this. You're doing retreats. You had just shared a story prior to us getting on that you had a retreat in Wyoming of survivors, right?
Yep.
And then you're creating products to support so that you can get outside support for your nonprofit. That when you told me, I thought, oh yeah, I know it's a ton of realtors. Oh my gosh, I know all kinds of organizations that would buy into products that they know is going to something as amazing as what you're doing, because that is an unmet market. What happens to the survivors? Where did they go? How did they express their greatest self in life? What kind of jobs, right? Because you had mentioned to me how the thought process of a person having been a survivor, their value, one of your taglines or one of your part of your products is the no cash value, right? And when you said that, I was like, well, what does that mean? You're basically saying, like, we're not for sale.
Right.
But what happens to a woman or a man in their 30s where that hasn't been the experience, right? Where they believe their worth is in the sum of what they've been getting for their activities.
Right. So we know that there is like a line of recovery, and it stops almost like a year after. So there are organizations all over the nation that do the removal. That's what Operation Underground with the movie you were just talking about, right? That's pretty much their mission. And it's great, it's needed, it's necessary, it's all the things. And it can almost be more traumatic though for the victim if there's not a line of defense set up after that. So if we don't have a place for them to go, we get stuck. And people get stuck in the thought that we need to create all these safe houses. Well, safe houses, under the original intent and how they are built within the nation of America, they are set up for a witness protection program. Well, most victims don't need that. In fact, they prefer not that because their cultural piece is now taken away from them. So all the things that they know and love, the music, the food, the people, the culture of where they come from is removed, and they're put into a new space. What I have learned and studied is that most of the time, people who are coming out of something like this, they're going to go back 5 to 10 times because they don't trust what they don't know. The unknown is very unpredictable. The abuse is predictable, right? So I can tell, and we can talk about let's talk about the alcoholic father coming home from work, and has 2 kids. The sound of the footsteps, the turning of the door, they have it so programmed in their survival mode that they know when to stay away. And so that's what we were dealing with, is when they don't know, man, they reacted all types of things, right? A car going down the driveway freaked them out, right? Like every time the police were coming for them, and you're like, there's no
you going on a date, jumping out of a moving car.
Right, jumping out of the moving car because he said I have so much potential. And I'm like, you're going to use me, So all these things. And so we don't know how they're going to react. So without medical, psychiatric, counseling on site, all very expensive specialties, a safe house is useless. And I don't want to say that because I have so many friends who do it, but they don't work for the long-term care. They're good for respite, recovery. That's it. And the programs aren't set up like that. They're set up for longer. And so you see all this turnover, and then you get burnout in your workers. So, and I suggest, again, this is just me, who's been around the block and knows a few things, it's more about individuals who are trained and care, right? So when you get people with lived experience who want to mentor and give back, there is a whole system of care of need. It's that peer-to-peer sort of relationship. And it's somebody who, like myself, who has a plethora of other survivor leaders in the area who can talk to the people coming out, who go into those places and are, they might live there, but we come in and provide services, which is one of the things I do. And we send words of encouragement, and we're there to make sure they have a ride. And we ask, well, what about their childcare? We ask those questions that most people don't think, because the normal, really good heart social worker goes A to B. And I'm like, you forgot about 8.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to get us to B. And if you don't think about those things because you didn't experience those things, then you're actually hurting me in the process versus helping me. You're making it more anxious and more let down, right? So instead, I'm like, think about it more like that drop-in center housing. How about lenient landlords? This is a whole coined term that I'm really pushing, because I needed 12. I counted 12 from the time I left my home state and got to the house I'm living in right now. I needed 12 lenient landlords to help me. They deducted rent when I wanted to paint the living room, or they were willing to take it late because I wasn't able to pay it on time, or they took it in cash versus a cashier's check, or whatever, right? So those people are super beneficial to the way we do things. And unfortunately, because of the housing crisis, we don't have as many of them because housing's so expensive. So now you've got this issue with homelessness, right? And so where do survivors go? Right back there. So if they don't have that, again, remove the housing, because they're going to end up homeless anyway because they can't afford it. And safe houses don't work. Do they have the one person who still gives a damn? And if that's the case, they'll keep moving forward, right? So that's a process that's on its own. Mental health has to be in many different ways. And I coined this, that your ATM, your alternative therapeutic modality, right? You can make deposits in,
I love that.
You can make withdrawals out. And it has to be anything. It has to be, from equine and art and music and dance to what I do with my kids: throw ice cubes, break sticks, right? Rip up paper, because anger is real and it's going to happen at any moment. And
they have a business on axe throwing, for crying out loud.
Right. So if we could get to that, where we're not going, hey, you need to talk to somebody, because honestly, I'm not going to talk about this stuff yet. I'm not ready, especially in the removal process. It still grosses me out. I feel a lot of shame and doubt and fear. So I would rather express it. And this is what I did with one of these girls. I said, I'm going to take a picture of anything you want to rip up. What do you want it to be of? She goes, my dad. Her dad was her abuser. So we didn't have a picture of her dad, but we took a picture of what the word was, dad, right? And she freaking ripped that thing to a million pieces. And then we did kind of like a seance out, like we did a burning party in our fire pit, and we just chucked it in there. It was confetti. It felt better. She was able to, process a little bit more and then tell us what was going on, so it's not what we think. I call it upside down and backwards, really, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs say food, water, shelter at the basis. Well, if you don't care about who you're sleeping with, where you're at in a hotel, on the ground, in the garbage, and you're going to go back to that over this nice place that has your own room and your own bathroom, you're going to go back to that. Guess what? Survival is not food, water, shelter. Human trafficking makes your victim think self-actualization. You're the best. You're the only. You're the one who's going to make me the money. You're the most, gorgeous, beautiful thing. So if we can cater to that first when we get them out, then we have some success. That's going to build trust a lot faster than offering me a place to sleep that I'm not going to be able to spend the night in. So again, it's very complex in its nature. But the unwiring is a beautiful thing, because you see, like on these retreats, the girl who says, I've never been on an airplane before. I've never seen snow. I've never ridden a horse. I've never, all of these, I've never, and they are 25 to 30 years old. We think about kids, giving them an option, but I'm like, let's bring back their childhood, the things that
Yeah.
they wanted to experience and didn't get to have because they were corrupted. So that's what the retreats are for. I honestly created them with the intent of unplugging, because like me, I got 10 things going at once. And most survivors do, because they're
Yeah.
entrepreneurs by heart.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so they are to unplug. And then we offer different ATMs, right? Different alternative
Mm-hmm.
therapeutic modalities to be able to sort through some of those emotions that do come up because they finally unplugged. And it's beautiful when you see these women get together, because their conversations are just raw, and they'll be like, I've never told this to anybody, and you get just
Right.
these really amazing testimonies, and you're like, dang, like, I don't feel bad for you. You are badass. Like that's
Yeah.
how I speak to them, because I'm just like, there is so much power in the collective
Mm-hmm.
of a survivor
Yeah.
leader group.
You know, I,
I love
I,
it.
I really, my son is in college right now to be a writer, and he tells me a story last week. He goes, Mom, do you know anything about the Pandora's box? Right? I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
everybody knows the Pandora's box. But he told a story that I'd never really heard in a Pandora's box situation where, um, Zeus, the Almighty God at the time, in the story is puts all of the suffering and pain and all of the ugliness of life inside this Pandora's box, and
Right.
it's released. But inside, after all of the suffering and pain and all that's released, inside is hope, is left
Right.
inside the Pandora's box. And hope can only be reached through women. This is how the story is
Oh,
told. And when I think of what you're sharing, it's not about like, oh my gosh, let's go help and get this whole excitedness of like, we're going to change the world one woman at a time. I think we have to, like what you're saying, is get to the real ground roots of what that looks like, the truth of it, that hope can only be found in this Pandora's box through a woman.
yeah.
Not to
And
say that it's
I
not
believe
about
it.
anything else, is that women, you can't be the survival led solutions badass today without the experience of what that even looks like, or what the other side looks like, and turning around that whole Maslow's hierarchy of, let's address not the physical aspects, that's what they've been living,
Right.
is let's
Right.
address the space of who they are as human beings, because there is no healing and solution to world problems without the woman's hope. We
Right.
carry the hope, every single one of us. And that's what I believe that you're doing. And that's why I think everything you do, I 100 support and want everybody else to support it. Because what
Thank
happens
you.
to us when we are out, when we, like you were saying about, it was her father. What does men look to her now if she doesn't
Right.
heal that version of her? Right.
They
And
don't. They
who
have a
knows?
lot of
She could
questions.
literally be the cure to cancer. We don't know
Right.
that.
Well, and she'll have the tenacity to do it, because if you can survive that, like, think about what you can create and what you can become. And I think that's where people get confused. They want to be that savior complex. They want to be able to say, "Oh, look
Mhm.
at what I did is such a great thing." And then they kind of lose the whole
Mhm.
purpose of why they're doing it, and it's to see what that kid or that adult is capable of really doing. You got to go
Yeah.
through the mess there. I mean,
Yeah.
the mud, the muck, the mire, but no mud, no
Yeah.
lotus, right? So
Right.
I'm really just a proponent on looking at a person for who they were created to be versus what I see,
Yeah.
and the moment you do that. So just to give you one last story, I work in the jails now. I want to create a reentry program, and it's created. I'm just testing it out to see if it's replicable. And what I've been doing is a lot of role playing in the jail,
Mm.
and just watching these women who have, the heart. I mean, not all of them are these huge criminals. Again, we get arrested for criminal behavior to survive while we were being trafficked. So we're identifying them. I've already trained all the law enforcement in this particular jail. We're identifying these women, and then we come in once a week and I do attachment theory. So, for example, last week
Mm.
we went over what is secure attachment, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized
Yeah.
attachment styles, and we role played it. And it was hilarious, because then they started to realize, ooh, I do that. Why is that? And then you go
Yeah.
through like your childhood to where you are today as an adult, and you're like, I've been so misled, so mistrusting, you know,
Mm.
all these things that I never thought I had any real choice over. But now that I recognize it, I can make a better
Mm-hmm.
choice. And they're just
Mm-hmm.
like coming up with ideas each other, how they're going to refrain from going back to the person that hurt them or stop their
Right.
addictive nature. And they're coming up with the ideas, right? So
Right.
jail is a wonderful place to get
Yeah.
involved because they have nothing else to do, right? And so
Right.
they want to be there, they're trying to be there. It helps on multi levels because once they have me, then when they get out, they have another soft handoff. I know all the
Right.
programs that are in the area, so I can help them
Right.
navigate some of those with ease, not with like, here's a phone number, call it and see what happens. No, I'm like, here's somebody I know who's on the other side of the phone,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to have coffee with them, you know?
Right.
And that just changes the game. It puts the humanity back into the person and the experience that they're having.
And that's really the solution to everything. This $1 trillion,
Right.
debt and all of the school issues, the school shootings, education, the whole thing. It really is in this space that you're talking about, is when we take
Mhm.
care of each other,
Right.
when we really take care of each other, there is nothing else better than that in terms of how we, because every time you give in to me, I give in to somebody else. It's this whole
Mhm.
reciprocal effect of love and giving and taking and generosity, and especially when it's been ripped from you and
Right.
stolen, and in that way that's so harsh. And I think the other thing I want to mention is, although it's like you said in the beginning, it's such a ugly place to, people don't really want to talk about it. They want to know about it and they want to, support it, but it's kind of this gritty, messy place. But that's the only place it can be. Like, let's be
Mhm.
completely honest. We almost died from a cough 2 years
Right.
ago. People coughed and we almost died.
All right.
Let's be completely for real here.
And
This
the
is where we
interesting.
start.
Right. And the recovery, like not to be like, and then it's all sunshine and rainbows and everybody lives
Yeah.
happily ever after. But I think to repair it, it's permission, connection, and communication. Because
Hmm.
if you can get permission from somebody to just be in your space, right? That's what I tell
Hmm.
people. Like even down to little kids, we don't hit, we don't kick. Well, we also don't lick, we don't suck, we don't nibble, right? Like
Right.
we start teaching it at an early age, they're going to know what inappropriate sexual behaviors are.
Right.
So we get permission, even at a child level. If you don't want to hug
Hmm.
grandpa or grandma, like
Right.
we gotta stop forcing people to touch people. We don't. That's just part of it. Then it
Right.
goes to connection. So if I have permission to connect with you, I'm gonna figure out what we have in common, and we're gonna spend time together, right? And then after that, the only way, and I survey like leaders all the time. What's the one thing that makes you feel out of control? And I hear it all the time: miscommunication. I can't
Hmm.
stand it, right? So if we can communicate better, which means, it's beyond just the screen. We're in this situation because
Right.
we're 3,000 miles apart, but stop relying on virtual
Yeah.
settings to have coffee dates. Get back into each other's space again with
Yeah.
that permission, with the connection, and communicate. And, and I'll end with this, that disorganized attachment is one of the most prevalent types of attachment theories with traffickers. Traffickers were
Mm.
victims before. Most of the time, they endured the abuse, they got sick of it, and they figured out how to own it and make it a business, right?
Mm.
So, as
Yeah.
that's trending on its own, we have to be
Right.
just as much trending in the prevention and rehabilitation. Because
Mm.
if we can figure out that disorganized attachment and how it's happening and when it's happening, guess who else has disorganized attachments? School shooters, mass murderers. They're
Serial
narcissistic.
killers.
Serial killer.
Yeah.
Because again, it goes back to whether it was pre-morbid and the fact that it was in their
Hmm.
DNA because it was passed down, or if it became something in their physical world
Hmm.
once they were born. It was a miscommunication, it was a
Hmm.
misfire in their brain, and they normalized it, and then they thought that this was
Right.
okay. So again, I have compassion for everybody, right? Victims, traffickers, buyers, all the like, because there's something that didn't go right in their life that made them feel like this
Yeah.
was okay. Now, how do we unwire that and rewire it? that is going to be probably wonderful, not even in our lifetime, because we're not willing to really sacrifice what it takes to do that. We're more or less like brush it under the rug or completely exile it, and we need to study it.
Right.
So that's what my PhD is all about, is trying to figure out this trauma thing within these different categories, because if we can create the connection, we can communicate through it, and we can probably figure out how to handle it.
I mean, we could have 8,000 more conversations and 8,000 more hours of this particular thing, because it's tied into so many other things, right? It's just, we have to get to where it's this gritty place before we can start talking about other things. But I want to respect everybody's time.
Right.
I don't want to say goodbye yet, because there's so much more we haven't even covered, but we'll do it again. Thank you so much. Thank you for your own survival mechanism internally. And then thank you for recognizing healing is so vital to your existence. And then taking all of that and turning it into a give back, because that's what this is. This is what survival-led solutions is. And I am so grateful for you and your friendship and your tenacity and your meteor-like blazing into the earth space that you are. Every time I talk to you, it could be months, and you're like, I've just built a new building over there on the east coast of, I'm like, wow, where? And you have 3 little kids. But see, this is what we're all capable of. When we're inspired and driven by giving back into what we have healed from, it changes the world, right?
It does.
So thank you. And thank you everybody who's been listening. By the way, all the information to get in touch with Alicia will be in our comments. Is there anything you want to share lastly that we can get a grab on, or like products, services, whatever it is?
So first, I think for anybody listening who went through that rabbit hole, is my rent check: rest, eat, nature, then talk about it. Okay. That's your how to do healing in 5 seconds or less, really. And then survivorledsolutions.org is the website. You can sign up for services, get more acquainted. There's actually a resource page for survivors and requesting a speaker. I train, I educate. That's my favorite thing to do. And I want to be really excited to tell you that this end of the summer, we're going to start parenting classes and virtual trainings on a regular basis. So just keep up with our website so you can learn more.
Yay. And I mean, if this inspired you or touched you in some way, please don't forget to leave a comment, or anything that I don't even know what else to say, because I am just so filled with the need and desire to move on this. So other than that, thank you so much, everybody. Please follow us, keep listening to us. Until next time, thank you again, Alicia. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel with the same name, The Evolution of the Fempreneur, and never miss out on valuable insights. Be sure to connect with us on our social media platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook under Wonderful Morrison. Until next time, Fempreneur sisters, I'll keep making the invisible visible, and let's continue celebrating our strength, resilience, and unstoppable fierce spirit together.